Welcome everyone to the latest episode. All right, good start. Latest episode of the Eurosnob Podcast. My name is Alex John. I know it's been a little while, but I'm happy to be joined by Zach. Zach, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me again.
Of course, and yeah, like I said, I know it's been a while. Just things coming up, work schedules. We just got a new puppy as well, so that takes up a lot of my nights when I get home. And Zach, I know you've got some new arrivals to the house coming soon.
Yeah, got baby number 2 on the way, so it'll be fun coming up.
Yeah, so
At least I'll be awake for the Arsenal games.
that's the thing, that you'll definitely be up for these early morning games, including Saturday's game, which could be baby's first North London derby. But before we get into that, I mean, obviously there's been quite a few fixtures since we last spoke, but we're going to kind of get into today's game against Bournemouth, a 5-1, pretty convincing victory, and then, sort of talk about our general impressions of where the season is at this point as we kind of get into the home stretch. But today's game, 5-1, pretty dominating performance from beginning to end, all things considered. Just general takeaways from the game and your thoughts as to what you liked, what you didn't like, and was there even anything not to like?
I think so. They call this the critical person in me, but at 2-0 up, I kind of felt like we were going to get lazy, and then we did, and we kind of gave away. Matteo Guendouzi gave away the ball pretty easily. Could have been a foul, but gave away it pretty easily for a tap-in. When it was 2-1, I was starting to get worried about Arsenal really, really starting to pull in Arsenal and let it go to a team that we're clearly better than, dominating on the field. Past that, as soon as we got the third goal at the beginning of the second half, I really felt like it was going the way it should be. I feel like everybody that needed a goal got a goal. Ozil scored, Aubameyang scored, Lacazette, Mkhitaryan, Koscielny. I mean, everybody that really could use a goal right now got one. So I think it's a really good confidence builder in the game going forward, especially coming into the game this weekend. And I was really delighted to see Mesut Ozil playing. Every time he picks up the ball, I just feel like our offense is just much more powerful. People make more runs. Iwobi said it here recently. I make the run because Mesut Ozil's playing. Sead Kolasinac said it several months ago on that magical pass that Ozil gave him. But more things happen when Mesut Ozil's running our offense than without. So I was glad to see him back in it.
Yeah, definitely. It was good to see him in the lineup. I think when the lineup came out, all things considered, given who we had available and who wasn't available with injury, this was probably as good a lineup as I could have hoped for, to be honest. I mean, I knew we were going to go 3 at the back, just given the issues at right back and the fact that we'd have to put Carl Jenkinson in because Maitland-Niles is still coming back from injury and Lichtsteiner was hurt last game. So I figured we'd go 3 at the back. I don't remember seeing if Xhaka was injured or not. I think he might have just been rested, honestly. I didn't see any injury report unless you had read something differently.
No, I didn't see anything either. Being that he's played a lot of minutes this year, I think it was just a rest.
Yeah.
And I told you, I enjoyed seeing Carl Jenkinson back there. I mean, he's nicking a living, absolutely. But if I wish I could do it, to be honest. I envy him. And he didn't play bad, to be honest. When he was called upon, he didn't really play badly.
That's the thing. With him, you always know what you're going to get. I mean, he's not a very technically skilled player. I think we know that. I think he would acknowledge that. But what you do get with him is
work ethic.
Yeah, it's a work ethic. It's an engine. He gets up and down the right side. He defends. He's willing to get up and attack and try to cross the ball in. Very quick, but also good straight ahead speed as well. So, he's not the worst kind of plan C, plan D to have. I mean, obviously, Bellerin going out really changed a lot about our attack, and I think we've all seen that over the past couple months, since it happened. And Maitland-Niles is a young player, but he's a midfielder also. He's not a fullback by trade, and they think he might progress into a winger, but not really a traditional fullback. So it's asking a lot of him.
I think he wants to play winger as well. I think I read an article recently where he sees himself as a winger, and that's the reason why they trust him so much out wide. But I agree. The more times that he plays back there at, right back or even left back when deployed there, I mean, he's taking away from his development in his natural position, whether that be attacking mid, center mid, or winger.
Exactly. It's kind of the Oxlade-Chamberlain effect where you just don't know. You want to play a guy in the position he wants to play, but at the same time, he's so versatile he can fill in elsewhere. But he wasn't available. And then Lichtsteiner, obviously, I mean, he's 34 at this point. You know,
I mean, we knew what we were getting into that situation. I mean,
exactly. I don't think anyone expected Lichtsteiner to play more than 15, 18 games this season.
I don't think Lichtsteiner expected more than that. I mean, he's a squad player. He came. I think they brought him in for his attitude, his championship pedigree, you know, his shithousery, which I love about him more than anything else in his game. But he brings that kind of hard man to the field that we really don't have in a lot of other players.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's kind of gotten a bad rap this season. I don't know what people were quite expecting with him. He was never going to bomb forward like Hector does. He's not a great passer of the ball. You know, what he is a solid veteran player who kind of picks the spots to get forward, but, you know, reads the game well. And now, obviously, adapting to the Premier League from Serie A is a big adjustment at that age. And so, you know, he's had issues in certain games. I don't think anyone would deny that. But so coming into this game, though, you know, not having him or Maitland-Niles going with Jenkins, and I think 3 at the back was probably the move. Torreira-Guendouzi is a partnership that I think could potentially be the center midfield partnership with the club moving forward. And then you had Aubameyang, Mkhitaryan, Ozil as your front 3. And, you know, my initial takeaways from the game, you know, on first viewing was just the interplay between the front 3, especially Ozil and Mkhitaryan, because we haven't really seen that in previous games, like especially under Emery, because most of the time they don't start together. So you don't really see those two creative attacking midfielders linking up together, but you saw the movement, the interchanging of positions, the understanding of where the other player would be. It was really fun to watch, and I think Ozil brings the best out of Mkhitaryan because it alleviates the creative burden on Mkhitaryan, and instead he can kind of pick and choose his moments as to when to drive forward with the ball, when to make off the ball runs to get, you know, to get open for a pass. And Aubameyang is a striker that really feeds off of that as well, because his game is predicated on his movement and understanding of where to be. And the 3 of them were just a joy to watch today. I think this was probably Mkhitaryan's best game as an Arsenal player.
I would agree. And as you started talking about Mickey there, I was, you know, thinking of my response here in my head. I've kind of slightly been disappointed with his overall performance since joining. I think he's a bit overvalued in terms of what we think we're going to get out of him. At the same time, when he's not deployed with Mesut Ozil, just as you said, too much of a creative burden is put on him. And, you know, he is that type of player to an extent, but he's never going to be the completely turn open a defense like Mesut Ozil can. And with Mesut Ozil on the field with him, they can both kind of play that elusive role together, and they kind of gel very well. So I like him whenever he's with Ozil. When he's not, let's just say I wish we still had Serge Gnabry.
Yeah, don't we all at this point, right? But yeah, I think the thing with Mkhitaryan is he's a supporting piece. He can't be your star piece. And I think, you know, the way his arrival at Arsenal went down, it fairly unfairly, it kind of put this burden of expectation on him, because we were replacing Alexis Sanchez, who had been very successful at Arsenal.
A mercurial player.
Yeah, exactly. A mercurial player, a very kind of explosive type player, scored a lot of goals, assists, and then you get a straight swap for him and Mkhitaryan, and you know bring Mkhitaryan in on huge wages because that was the only way to make the deal work. And so you're tying yourself down to a player who at that time was 28 on a long-term deal on huge wages. And, you know, this season we've seen bits and pieces of him thriving, you know, towards the latter few months. He's definitely seen improvement in how he's performed this season. But I don't think it's unfair to say he's been slightly disappointing at times, or at least frustrating, because you see the ability with him. You know, he's one of these players who has incredible technical ability, yet sometimes you question that because of the times that he leaves his overlapping fullback short, you know, with a pass, or overhits a pass, or, you know, mishits a shot that, you know, a player of his quality should be doing a little bit better with. So he's definitely a very inconsistent player, but I will say within the past, since he came back from injury, really, he's really kind of taken his game up to another level. I don't know if it's because he sees the competition for his spot, or just whether, something kind of clicked with the system and he feels more comfortable, but it's encouraging to see because like you said, I just don't think we can have one creative outlet on the team. It can't just all be Ozil and everything, everything revolving around Ozil creating, because first of all, he doesn't start every game. So you need these alternate creators in the team.
Yeah, I mean, we do. I agree. We do need alternatives, but if you think of the games where he had this, really long run outside the team, Mesut Ozil, look at our offensive production. Look at the chances created. I mean, we're absolutely boring to watch. And I hate the saying that. I really do. But I value Mesut Ozil a lot higher than most people. I recognize that he's got some shortcomings defensively, but I mean, I value him, and I wish he was the first name on the team sheet every week. There was a point I believe it was the first half today, where he charged all the way back down to the right back position, bodied somebody off the ball, chipped it over them, and then, did a little 1-2 pass and picked up a foul. And you could hear the entire stadium light up seeing Mesut Ozil track back and do that. And I think if he can just continue, he doesn't have to be a, Wayne Rooney that plays up and down on every position on the field. But I mean, if he just takes 10% more adding to his defensive responsibility and really committing to it, I think, there'll be a statue outside the stadium. I mean, that's my personal view, but I mean, I really value him a lot. And I think that he doesn't want to leave the club. I mean, it would take a lot of money and the perfect position for him to leave, but I really don't think he wants to. So I hope he's there for years to come and stays as our number 10 first name on the sheet. That's just me, though.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I love Mesut Ozil. I love the way he plays. I love how effortless he makes things look. I mean, you look at that first goal, it was that same trademark move of his where he hits the ball down into the ground to generate a bounce, which usually fools the keeper. I mean, he's done it several times that I can remember.
But you can't prepare for that as a goalkeeper.
Exactly.
You can do.
Because instinctually, your first thought is to go down because any player is going to try to beat you down low. I mean, occasionally a player will go for the chip, but you don't really expect a player to do that, and then you misread the bounce. But he does it so instinctually, and it's funny to me where you hear pundits who say, "Oh, well, he mishit it, but it still went in." No, it's intentional. That's his level of game intelligence. He knows how to do that. And when he's on form, everything he does has purpose. Now, there are legitimate criticisms about him in big games away from home, no doubt. But, I would also say that a midfield is not just one player. So if he's not getting on the ball, that also means your center midfield duo isn't doing enough to win the ball back in good positions to get him the ball, or isn't doing enough to necessarily even maintain some control because he's not a player that's going to control a game. He's a player that can control your attack. He's a player that can generate chances, but he's not a player, like a Steven Gerrard who could run a game from midfield. That's they just play different roles. So I don't know why people suddenly think that's going to change with him. Now, what I would say is the way that the club has handled the situation has been very, very confusing, to say the least, because he's been benched for several games. Our offensive production, like you said, and our chances created have taken a dip. And then you hear Emery saying stuff about, he just needs to keep training and all the players are important and this and that. And, sometimes Emery's lack of ability to communicate in English, at least to the extent he would want to, I think sometimes hurts him because I think things get lost in translation perhaps, but or he's not articulating what he wants to say, but he always says, I like Mesut. I think he's a good player. He just needs to keep training hard and we need all our players to do well. But then you see a performance like this and you just wonder, well, what's going on here? Because I know the thought is by a lot of people is that Emery doesn't really rate Ozil as his type of player. the kind of more work rate oriented player. But at the same time, when you see a player do what he can do on the field, I think you have to figure out a way to tailor your system to him, because I think the best coaches in any sport tailor their systems to fit their personnel.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, I'm not going to compare him to Cristiano Ronaldo in terms of talent at all, or Messi, or any of those, absolute the best in the world. But I mean, they don't get back. They're not defensive players. They're not, harrying the defense every single moment they have the ball. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, when you have a player like arguably, and as unbiased as I can say this, arguably the best creative player in Europe, and you're saying, I can't play him because his work ethic is too much. And I know Emery's not saying that, but I can't play him because he doesn't have a strong enough work ethic. He doesn't get back. I mean, what's more important, scoring goals, or having one less player defending, excuse me. So, I mean, I'm with you there, but I don't know. I don't agree with all the criticism that he gets. And going back, you said, with Emery's English, I remember after the debacle that was the German World Cup and Mesut Ozil retiring and et cetera, one of the articles that stuck out to me was Emery saying, this is Mesut Ozil's home. We want this to be his home. Flash forward 6 months later, and this is the treatment he's receiving. I think a lot of fans' treatment of him is unfair. I think his treatment this season by the coaching staff's been unfair. I don't know. I just hope things get better for him. On the flip side of that, though, the assist for his goal, another assist for Kolasinac. I mean, the guy is really developing. Maybe all he needed was a strong run, and he fits perfectly in a 3-5-2. Like, he's a monster going forward.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing with Kolasinac, is he's really not a natural left back in a four-man back line, but when he can play that wing back position and there's a little bit less responsibility on him to get back and defend, and he can focus more on attacking and overlapping with Iwobi or Mkhitaryan or Ozil or whoever, he's so good at the final third about keeping his head up and looking for that cutback or looking to play the ball square. Sometimes I wish he could actually take the shot on sometimes, because I think it's there, but he's so good in the final third. But in his defensive third, he worries me with his lack of kind of quick twitch movements. I think, a good dribbling winger can get past him a little bit too easily for my liking. But in a 3-5-2, or 3-4-2-1 like we played today, that's kind of alleviated to some extent because there's less burden on him because they'll have an extra center back covering him. But like you said, that first goal, I mean, that was a beautiful assist, and Kolasinac getting into a good spot. The second goal was us winning the ball in a good position. The ball getting to Ozil, then just a gorgeous pass to Mkhitaryan for a really. He made a pretty difficult finish look very easy, actually. And, from there at 2-0, you're feeling pretty good about things. As you mentioned earlier, the Guendouzi issue, and that's something we can get into later about Guendouzi and just, how much of a burden's been put on him a lot earlier than we all thought. But like you said, that goal after halftime to make it 3-1 really kind of settled things down. And then I think we really got into our groove, and don't underestimate how important those last couple goals were to build up the goal differential as well. I think, given how close the top four race is, every little bit matters, because I think at this point you would say that third and fourth are up for grabs. And, Spurs are only 4 points ahead of us. Then we're in fourth. I think United is 1 point behind us. Chelsea's 3 points behind us with the game in hand, but I think we've got the better goal difference.
We do, but I mean, on Manchester United, it's only 2 goals after today's games. So yeah, I absolutely agree. Goal difference is definitely going to be key. And, the bottlers that they are, Tottenham is kind of falling apart like we thought they would, or at least how I always think they will. I mean, regardless, but we are only 4 points off of them, and we have a 9-point goal difference advantage on them as well. Excuse me, a 4-point. But I mean, even still, it's all up for grabs, and I hope we can push Tottenham for third and celebrate St. Tottenham's name again.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years since we could celebrate that, but obviously we're gonna see this weekend how that goes, because we got the North London derby. on Saturday morning for those of us in the U.S. And it's
really
kind
close the gap.
Yeah, we can potentially get that gap to 1. I mean, the teams are kind of coming in on very different levels of form right now, because Arsenal are coming in, feeling pretty confident about themselves. Admittedly, Bournemouth wasn't at full strength, but anytime you beat a Premier League team 5-1, there's something to be said for that. Spurs are coming in on the back of 2 defeats. They lost to Burnley last week, and then today they lost to Chelsea, including one of the strangest own goals I think I've ever seen, where Trippier basically hit a Thierry Henry curling finish right around his own goalkeeper for some reason.
I mean, did he not look up? Did Lloris not shout at him? What happened there?
I honestly don't think that Trippier looked. I think he just assumed if he played the ball back, Lloris was going to read where he was going with it, and then he realized how hard he hit it and the angle that he hit it at. As soon as he hit it, you saw him kind of say, "Oh shit." I fucked up. But that, so that was funny to see. But the thing is that result was probably not the result we needed. I would have preferred Chelsea lost, or at the very least a draw, because I think at this point, getting top 4 is more important than finishing ahead of Spurs. I think, if they had lost
third, though, we avoid the play-in. We avoid.
Well, no, the play-in's done now, I think, right? I think it's done. Top 4 automatically qualify.
I didn't know that.
Is that right? I might have made that. No, I don't think we do the play-in anymore. So I think it's like the lesser. It's not. I don't want to say the lesser teams. It's like the teams in the lower leagues that have to do that. Now it still sounded bad when I said it, but it's basically not the top league teams don't have to do it. Like the La Liga and EPL teams, I don't think they have to play the play-in, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to look that up and realize I'm completely wrong after the fact. But regardless, I mean, we just need to get top 4. So, even if Spurs finish ahead, but we got 4th, I would take that because of what it means for the summer and what it means next season. But, so Chelsea winning didn't necessarily help us. I mean, it did bring Spurs closer to the pack, but it also means Chelsea kept in touch with us while playing one of their hardest games. So you have to look at it that way. So, I mean, we need to start seeing Chelsea and United dropping points. Obviously, our fate is in our own hands at this point. If we do what we're supposed to do, we will get top 4. But, we're going into next week. I would say it's probably a season-defining week. You have Spurs away on Saturday morning. Then you go away to Rennes in the Europa League on Thursday, and then Manchester United next Sunday. So, your 2 options to get back in the Champions League are obviously either the top 4 and the Europa League. And, you could see both of those avenues either pretty much shut after next week or very much in play. If you get top 4, the prize money is a little bit more significant because you get a bigger chunk of the revenue. And at the same time, winning a cup competition is such a crapshoot. So banking on the Europa League is always tough because there's still great teams in it, like Napoli, Chelsea, Inter, teams like that. So you don't necessarily know how that's going to unfold. So, I mean, what would kind of be your approach lining up against Spurs in terms of how you allocate the squad, given the Rennes game, given the United game, given that Lacazette is suspended for the Rennes game, and given that Rennes in the French league, the French Federation basically postponed Rennes' game this weekend so they'd have more time to prepare for us.
Did they really?
Yeah, I was just hearing about that this morning, actually.
And did Lacazette get 2 games for that swing?
He got 2 games, so he's out for both.
Okay. I thought he was just out the second leg of Bate. Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, with the first game being on the road in France, I would still probably field the strongest possible lineup that we can against Spurs. As much of a specialist in the competition as Unai Emery supposedly is or what have you with three wins, but I still think the best and easiest and the most direct route would be a top 4 finish. We're already fighting for it. I'm not saying to field an understrength side to go to France at all, but I would still, if I were coach, which obviously I'm nowhere near it, but if I were coach, I'd still field as strong of a squad as we possibly can.
And that's kind of the interesting part is we saw how he played today, but given what we've seen from Unai Emery this season, maybe it's just me, but I would bet a significant amount of money that if, between Ozil and Mkhitaryan, I think only one of them starts at best. My feeling is that Ramsey and Iwobi will start because of their work rate, because of their energy. I think Emery trusts Ramsey in these types of games. That you've seen him do it against Liverpool.
Yeah.
So I think he played against Chelsea when we beat them 2-0 as well. I tend to think those two will come back in for that game.
I look at it this way. Imagine if we field a strong lineup versus Tottenham, kind of a slightly weaker side versus Randaway, another strong lineup against Manchester United, hopefully get 6 points out of that, really close the gap and set a marker for the top four. After that, we have 4 days of rest before we can, go back to have Rennes at home, for the second leg of it. So even if we don't perform super well in France, we can always make up for it at home. That would be, ideal for me if we could really focus and get those 6 points out of United and Spurs.
I mean, look, 6 points against those two teams it's obviously the dream, but I would take 4 right now if you offered it to me. I would take 4 out of 6 without question, because these are the two hardest games left on our schedule. Now, I know we actually have some tricky away games at Wolves and at Watford, and I think people are forgetting that when they're looking at this, but for all intents and purposes, these are our two toughest games. Spurs, a rivalry game, away from home, they're going to be fired up after losing 2 games. And then United in a really good run of form. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer seems to have them cooking pretty well. I know they've got some injuries, but they beat a good Crystal Palace team today. I would take 4 out of 6 from that. And I mean, as much as I hate to say this, I'd rather win the United game than the Spurs game because of what it would mean for top 4.
See, yeah, I mean, I see where you're going with that, but again, 4, I don't know. I would accept 4, obviously, but I would definitely, I see, and this is going to be very petulant sounding, but I don't see Ryan to be on the same level as we are, starting 11 versus starting 11. So I don't want to disrespect them at all. Obviously, they've done a lot with what they have there in France. But I think we can get away, maybe we can get away with a draw on the road or a 1-1 or something like that. So I don't know, man. If we could really get 6 points out of these two, it shortens the gap on Tottenham for 1. If Tottenham loses a 4th game in a row when we play United, then of course we'll take 3rd if we beat them. But if we take both games and win both of them, I mean we're putting a little bit of a game of space between us and United, and potentially, if not overtaking Tottenham, at least closing the gap if they win their second games. I mean, that would be my focus. I think we can do a lot more to Rennes at home in the second leg, knowing that we have, after that, we'll have 2 weeks to wait on our next game at home against Newcastle, so we can spend a lot of energy in these next 4 games and really get away with it. It's not going to be a super congested fixtures. We've got a lot in the next 2.5, 3 weeks, but then we have a 2-week break. So I think March is these next 4 games are a turning point of our season. This is going to define it right here, is how we get through these next 4 games.
Yeah, it's I'm trying to think through the squad rotation possibilities, in my head right now. My gut says that we'll play 3 at the back on Saturday. I just think in a away game we're going to go conservative, which, fair enough. I mean, hopefully Maitland-Niles is good to go because, as good as Jenkinson was today, I'd still put Maitland-Niles out there. And Kolasinac, you put him in a better position there. So I imagine we see Torreira, Xhaka in midfield. And then, Torreira, Xhaka, Ramsey probably. And then,
does Mesut not fit in the lineup for you?
I would play him. I just don't think Emery is going to.
Not after today. Did he get 90 minutes in today?
Yes. Yeah, he played the full 90, didn't he? Yeah, because
I don't think I saw him get subbed off. So yeah, I mean, I don't think he'll get. He might come off the bench around the 70th minute or so, but I don't see him starting as much as I want him to.
yeah,
Which means, you're right. Ramsey, Xhaka, Torreira. I would like to see a Lacazette just because I think he holds up the ball a lot better. Whereas, as you mentioned earlier, Aubameyang is predicated on movement and ball speed. Lacazette is a little bit more of a link-up player, which I think we're going to need on the road, even though it's down the road, but on the road with Tottenham. So for me, it would be Lacazette, Mkhitaryan, Ramsey. No, Lacazette, Mkhitaryan, Iwobi, and probably Ramsey and Torreira. That would be my midfield and top. I don't think Xhaka really gets it right back there after missing today's game. I don't think he steps right back in.
I see. My gut is if he was being rested today, then it was for the purpose of playing on Sunday. So I think it'd be Xhaka, Torreira, Ramsey as a 3-man midfield, and then you only have 2 in attack at that point. I guess that's the other problem: is do you put Iwobi or do you put a Mkhitaryan? I'm not sure. I tend to think it'll be Iwobi and then Lacazette, but that's a really conservative lineup. That's just what I think we might see from Emery, though.
Yeah, because he loves Iwobi and Iwobi's work rate, strength, and his effort. So, I mean, I'd probably see Iwobi as well.
Plus how he links up with Kolasinac on the overlap and things like that. The other thing that I kind of think is based on the red card that Lacazette has in Europe, there is at least kind of a built-in opportunity to rotate your strikers and keep them fresh. So potentially you can play Lacazette.
Bring on all the late.
Yeah, bring on Aubameyang if you need a goal. And then knowing Aubameyang will probably start on Thursday. And then Lacazette, again, would start against United. Bring on Aubameyang if need be. And then, Aubameyang starts against Rennes. So that's the possibility given the fact that Emery does seem to like playing only one striker rather than 2. And this is kind of a way to do it in a way that makes sense. I do agree with you that Lacazette's hold-up play offers a lot in this kind of situation. Tottenham are going to come out very, very aggressive in the first 15, 20 minutes and bomb forward with their fullbacks. So I do think I can see an argument for Aubameyang because of all the space they're going to leave behind. But I think given the struggles we might have in controlling midfield, we're going to need someone who can hold up the ball and link up the play.
Well, there's an argument to be made for Mesut Ozil then as well. If they're going to be bombing forward, knowing that he's not going to track back as much, he's going to be the one that can play that precise ball. So there's an argument to be made there. Although I agree, I don't think we'll see him start. There is an argument to be made.
Oh, yeah. I see. And I think with you and me, we're both thinking how we would set up, but I think we both know how Unai Emery likes to set up, and it's usually different than what a lot of us would do in that situation. And fair play to him. Like he's the coach. He's got his methods. I get that, but I do think he's got a tendency to kind of revert to his conservative nature in certain games. I mean, you saw some of the points we dropped in games that we had no business dropping points in. I mean, we dropped points to Brighton. We dropped points to West Ham. We dropped points to who am I forgetting? It was another one of the smaller teams, and those points come back to hurt us because we weren't creating chances in those games because we set up so conservatively. And I worry in a game like this that's what he's going to do as well. I mean, I understand wanting to be practical, but at the same time, I've always said with this team, the defense is going to struggle whether you play 4 at the back or 3 at the back. Why not use the strength of your team, which is in attack, and use that personnel? You might have to outscore teams. I mean, there's no shame in that because the defensive personnel is just not going to get any better this season. That's something that can be addressed in the summer, but it can't be addressed now. So why not play to your strengths?
What's the status right now on Mustafi?
He sucks.
I mean, is he fit to play?
Yeah.
I mean, the thought is obviously in that back 5 or back 3, it's going to be Koscielny and the Papa himself. with Socrates. But do
Yeah,
you put Monreal in there, or do you put another actual center back, knowing that Mustafi plays better? Albeit, yes, I agree he sucks, but he plays better when he has people behind him.
Yes,
Put him
I
in?
think that's a good point. I think I would probably put him in as the right center back in a three back there. I mean, I know Monreal offers a lot in terms of his passing ability and also his ability to bring the ball out of the back. But I do think having three center backs, especially because you're going up against Kane and Son, and they're both very quick players. Their movement is good. I think you need that extra physical presence to kind of cope with that situation. So I would probably do what you said and play Mustafi there.
I just, obviously I worry about, Harry Kane just baiting him into a tackle that we all know Mustafi will give away a penalty on. That's what I worry. The thing you get with Monreal is you get an intelligent defender. He's not as physically impressive as even a Mustafi. Mustafi is a solid guy. You don't get that out of him. He's not, what is he, maybe 5'11", 6 foot, but you get a very intelligent, communicating, reads the game well. I mean, it's a hard choice. I mean, that might be one of the toughest choices of the game is Mustafi or Monreal.
Yeah, it was funny because the press were asking Emery after today's game, how, he was asking about Ozil basically and whether he'd play, and Emery said, well, no, first I have to rewatch our game, then I have to rewatch Tottenham, and then I'm going to do some analysis. And I don't doubt that he's got a very thorough process. I'm just not sure as to
what it is.
I'm not sure what it is, because I feel like his approach is just very specific to him and what he's looking for. It's not something that you can really predict. I think with managers like Klopp and Guardiola, you're very clear on what they're looking for, and you're very clear on how they're going to set up the majority of the time. I mean, obviously Guardiola can kind of throw things for a loop, like he did against us when they beat us 3-1, and he basically played three defenders and then played all the rest of their midfielders, and they just completely bossed the game against us. But with Emery, it's hard to predict because there's not necessarily a consistent train of behavior, other than he tends to revert to a conservative tendency. So I guess that would lead me to the next question is what is your thought on Emery this far into his reign? I mean, obviously we're on a little bit of a run of good form, but what do you think about him, his methods, how he has us playing?
I remember you, Ian, and myself, we had a chat before the season, and we talked about who was going to get the axe, somewhere in between the middle of the season and the end, who was going to be the person that suffers that. And we knew there was going to be some growing pains coming into the season. So I don't think that we've seen anything that we weren't, in our heart of hearts expecting. Although as Arsenal fans, we have this almost weird way of thinking where we think we are above where we are based on history, even though our recent history shows that we are not where we like to assume we are. I think for where we are realistically as a club, what our aspirations are, what our financial concerns are, whatever they may be, or however ununderstandable that they are, I think he's had a successful first season. He's got his back challenging for the top four, which, we didn't really challenge for last season. I mean, we kind of did, but not really. So, I mean, I think so far in his first season, he's been successful. I think he's going to need – I think before we can really judge on Emery out is going to be second season. He's going to have another summer window where he's seen all the players. He's going to have another January window. We're going to see Ramsey go out. Maybe we'll see Denis Suarez stay as a replacement for Ramsey. We'll kind of see how that goes. We'll see what he brings in this summer. It's going to be weird without Mislintat, digging up the diamonds. But I think overall, knowing what we were getting out of him, he's got some championship pedigree with domestic cup in France, with Europa League in Sevilla. We kind of knew what we were going to get, and I think this season so far has been a success. We knew we weren't going to challenge Liverpool or City for the title this season. There's no way.
Yeah, I mean, my mind always kind of changes from game to game, which is, I realize, not helpful here. But, I totally acknowledge the team he took over was a very flawed team in terms of how it was structured. And then the age profile is not where we want it to be. But we did add a lot of key pieces in the summer. We added Lucas Torreira, Baron Leno, Socrates, Lichtsteiner, Guendouzi. So we added some good pieces to what was a talented, albeit flawed team. I think at the beginning of the season, we saw more of a clear idea of what he wanted, especially in the Chelsea game. Away to Chelsea, we lost that game, but you saw his idea about playing out of the back. And then it almost feels like after the initial couple of bad results, he reverted to playing a little bit more pragmatically. And, it's hard to argue with the 22-game unbeaten run, but at the same time, I feel like if you look at our expected goals at that point, we were drastically overperforming it. And we were all, we would always turn it on in the second half. And I think that kind of masked a lot of issues. And now in recent months, I guess my criticism would be, what is this style? Because initially I thought it was this play out of the back. And he said, we want to be protagonist on the ball and this and that. But yet, we're having games where, lower, teams near the bottom of the table are having more possession than us. And that's seems to be counterintuitive to what we're being told about being protagonist. So it's hard to identify a clear style of play. I mean, in attack, it seems to be get your fullbacks to overlap and cut the ball back, which is fine. But if that doesn't work, you need kind of a plan B. And that's where my concern is. It's just, I'm not sure what it is we're trying to do, because I think if it was clear, like, this is how we're going to play out of the back. Yeah, we might struggle, but this is how we're trying to implement it for seasons to come. I think I'd be a little bit more positive about that. But at the same time, I totally get what you're saying. I mean, at this point, it is a results business, and his goal is to get us back in the Champions League. And at this point, we are very much in contention for Europa League and top four. And so, I'd probably give him like a C+ at this point, but obviously there's so much hinges on getting in top four, because that's going to determine our transfer budget. That's going to determine the quality of player we bring in, because we have to reset the wage bill too. We have Welbeck leaving, Czech leaving, Ramsey leaving. Ozil might leave. You never know if someone could take his wages. It seems like the club wants those wages off the books. And then you've got Monchi coming in to replace Mislintat potentially, and he's going to have his own criteria of who he wants to bring in terms of maybe more players from the Spanish league, just given his ties to that league. And so there really is so much up in the air at this point.
What I'm interested to know, and this is just the finance in me, is how the upcoming political changes and the Brexit deal and everything is going to affect the type of players that we can sign going forward. I'm really interested to see how that's going to affect not only Arsenal, but all English leagues. All English clubs. That's going to be an interesting one in my mind. But yeah, I mean, you hit nail on the head on just about all of the points there. So I'd have to agree, and it'd be interesting to see what we have going forward. Let me ask you a question, though.
Yeah, sure.
What is Denis Suarez? Why did Denis Suarez happen? What are we going to do with Denis Suarez? Is he ever going to make an impact in a game? What is Denis Suarez?
That is a great question, and we haven't had a chance to do a pod since he signed on loan with an option to buy. And I think we all, when it happened, kind of took it with an open mind. We were pretty impressed that Raul got the option rather than obligation to buy. I think it was a general consensus, and we all kind of said to ourselves, look, he's not playing. He's barely playing at Barcelona, but then again, there's been a lot of good players who didn't quite make it at Barcelona. There's no shame in that, and he has experience with Emery, so let's see where it goes. I guess at this point, and I know it's really early to say because he's only had cameo appearances in like 4 or 5 games, I'm just not sure what he does. It sounds really simplistic, and I don't mean it to be, but I'm just not sure what it is he's actually good at. What is he bringing to the squad that no one else is bringing? Because Iwobi's a better dribbler. I think I think Mkhitaryan and Ozil are better creators, and I think Ramsey's better at driving through midfield. So, I mean, he's a serviceable technical player, but he's played so little football this season that, I wonder what it is he brings. But then, Emery made these comments about him having to adapt and that taking time, and it's kind of led some people to believe that Emery is planning on bringing him in regardless. So this 6 months might, or not 6 months, sorry, these 3 months might serve as just an adaptation period more than anything, under the assumption that he'll just sign in the summer.
Well, I mean, he could be a direct replacement for Aaron Ramsey, but that remains to be seen. I think he still has some development left within himself. I really think he's got some room to grow. But you're absolutely right. There's a lot of players that haven't made it at Madrid or at Barcelona or Bayern Munich or these top. I mean, there can only be 11 players,
right?
And as a midfielder at a club like that, behind a club that produces some of the best midfielders we've ever seen, it's not necessarily a damning thing about him that he didn't make it at Barcelona. Fabregas didn't make it at Barcelona. Alex Song didn't make it at Barcelona. Alex Gleb didn't make it at Barcelona. Thierry Henry didn't make it at Barcelona. The Zlatan didn't make it at Barcelona. I mean, the list goes on. So I don't want to say that he's a Barcelona reject and thus, not worth anything. He's only 24, 25, so he's got some room to grow going into the really peak of his career, peak of his ability. But if all the YouTube research is correct, I mean, he looks like a fantastic dribbler, somebody that's always trying to try and take somebody on and create space to put a killer pass in is what he looks like. How that ability adapts from the Spanish league, that he has seen some success, especially when he was at Sevilla and Villarreal. He did see a bit of success with it. It remains to be seen of whether he will see the same kind of success in a much more punishing and rougher league that is, the English Premier League. I'm interested to see how it goes, but I'm cautious as well. I don't want to get my hopes up too high with him.
Yeah, he seems a little bit lightweight on the ball, and again, that could be just the adaptation, and maybe with the full summer to bulk up a little bit, he can get used to it. I'm not sure, given where our budget's going to be in the summer. I'm assuming it'll be less than 100 million. Can we really afford to outlay 20 million on a player that's not necessarily better than any starter we have? Like, I don't think he's even if he improves, I'm not sure I see him as a starting level player. Now, then again, maybe 20 million doesn't get you a starting level player in today's market, and that's just the way it is. That
is for the level that we are. That's absolutely right, especially for, let's just say, quote unquote, potentially a Champions League club. You're not going to get a starting player for 20 million, not unless it's a youth player that you play him maybe 4 or 5 years later he develops, a la Mbappe or something like that. But put it this way, looking at the website right now, Denis Suarez has played 57 Premier League minutes. In his 3 appearances, he hasn't totaled one 90-minute game. So it's still, there's a lot to be desired. There's a lot to be evaluated. He does have some room. He's still gelling with the squad. The squad's not as full of Spaniards as it used to be. So, there's always that contingent that helps a player adapt a little bit better. But, he's got Lucas Torreira, he's got Monreal, he's got Hector, but I mean, there's not a lot of Spaniards there to help them adapt. The way that when Matteo Guendouzi came over, he had Aubameyang, Lacazette, as that kind of French connection that he was hanging out with that really helped him settle down. Plus, it was during the summer. I could see us shelling out the 20 million on him only because I don't see us signing a lot of attacking players this summer. With Mesut Ozil unlikely to leave. I'm gonna call it now, February 27th, 2019. Mesut Ozil is unlikely to leave. Ramsey's gone. We're gonna need another winger type attacking midfield player. Welbeck's gone as well, like you said. So we need another player in that position, but we don't need to spend another 50 or 60 million just because that would be a waste. We can save our big money for another defender or a defender and a left back. I know I saw a rumor on Twitter earlier, Nico Tagliafico, can't pronounce his last name to save my life, but the
I think that was
Argentine
right,
left back,
actually. I think you got it.
the Argentine left back. I mean, I've seen bits and pieces of him. I've seen him during some international competition with Argentina, but he's at Ajax. So, I mean, at his age, is that really a great thing? I mean, I know he's still young, but I mean,
He's not that young. He's 26. I mean, in football years, you would have hoped someone would have made a bigger move by that point.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I was alluding to exactly. I mean, Ajax is more of a place where you go to develop, not a place where you spend your best years. But, I mean, when it comes to the South American players, they don't always get noticed till late. I mean, think of the unfortunate deceased of the player from Nantes, that was going to move to Crystal Palace.
Emiliano Sala.
Yeah. Sala, yeah, I was going to say Sarah for some reason. Sala, yeah. I watched some videos of him during that entire catastrophe, and he's a late bloomer as well. So, I mean, you never know. He was playing for Argentina's selection. So, I mean, obviously he's got some value there. I don't think he embarrassed himself playing for Argentina. So, I mean, maybe. We'll see. I don't know. Kolasinac playing pretty well, so we might not even have another need for a left back, but Monreal is getting old. But yeah, no, I mean, going back, I don't think we're going to spend a lot of money in our attacking players or really attacking midfield either. I just don't see us having enough money for us to just waste on that with Mkhitaryan, Ozil, potentially, potentially Denis Suarez. We've got the two strikers up top. I just don't see it. So, I mean, if we could get, $20 million for Denis Suarez and then put another 50 or 60 million into some defense, we might, come out on top after the summer. I don't really see any other big midfield needs right now, being that we have that partnership developing between the three, depending on how we rotate it, of Xhaka, Torreira, and Guendouzi.
Yeah, I mean, my thing with Suarez is if we honestly weren't sure if we were going to buy him in the summer, I think we would have kind of thrown him in really quickly because there's only like 10, 15 games left in the season. I mean, closer to 15, 20 probably. There aren't tons of games left, though. I mean, so, it's a very small sample size that he's going to get to prove himself. So if they're easing him in like this, it leads me to believe that the decision's already been made and this is more kind of a formality. I mean, I would say in terms of attacking players, I do think we need a genuine winger. I really like Nicolas Pepe out of Lille, but I think he's probably out of our price range, so we'll see how that goes.
See, that's what I hate is Arsenal is one of the most valuable clubs out there. I mean, where did all our money go? How is anything, I mean, aside from an absolute world-class player out of our price range? I don't understand it. I don't see us spending 200 million. We're not PSG or something like that, but how is somebody like that out of our price range? How is Thomas Lemar out of our price range?
That's a really good point. I mean, you're wondering where all this money goes and you hear about all these players and then you're like, oh shit, we got to jump on it soon because if they have one decent season, they're out of our range. And for one of the 10 biggest clubs in the world financially, it really shouldn't be like that. But yeah, I'm sure we could do a whole podcast on the finances and trying to figure out what's what. But I know we got to wrap things up. So I guess before I let you go, let's get your predictions on the 3 games next week and we'll kind of measure up afterwards. We'll do a podcast after next week and see how we come out. So Spurs away, Rennes away, United at home.
Okay. Writing this down as well. Spurs away, I'm saying 3-2 to Arsenal. Rennes away, 1-1. Manchester United 2-1 Arsenal.
All right, so I will go 1-1 draw on Saturday against Spurs. I think Rennes. I think a draw feels right. I think 1-1 feels right there. And then United at home, because of the injuries they have, I think we probably take that one 2-1. So I think
confidence versus Spurs, huh?
I don't know why. I feel like this, they're going to kind of feed off of this, these last 2 losses. And I I'm hoping we can continue their capitulation. That would be great. Don't get me wrong. But that's how I see it unfolding. I hope you're right, though. I like your outcome much better. But I'm going to wrap things up, though. I know it's been a while, so I appreciate you guys tuning in again. And we'll definitely try to get something out after next week, because I think after those 3 games, we'll have a really clear idea of where the season's going. But, Zach, any last words?
Shout out to Arsenal Mo, who I'm going to be asking for another retweet on this one. So shout out to the ever-present Arsenal Mo.
All right. Well, for Zach, my name is Alex. Once again, if you want to find the podcast, it's the Eurosnob Podcast. You can find us on iTunes. You can find us on Podomatic, on iTunes at Eurosnob Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at twitter.com/EurosnobPod, Facebook.com/EurosnobPod. You can find me at UFGoonerAJ on Twitter. And where can the people find you, Zach?
At ZMTaylor13 on Twitter.
Alrighty. So yeah, if you've got any comments, questions, things you'd like us to discuss in the future, just let us know. But other than that, we'll sign off. So take care, guys.
Thanks.